Hi there guys. I'm not sure if it's because I've made 2 videos in quick succession there kind of over the weekend, and I actually made a 3rd video as well because I was just feeling kind of in the swing of it, and I'm going to be uploading that later in the week, I'd say. But I just sort of was on my way home from work and I just felt like making another video. I suppose making videos and often blogging for me as well is one of those things that I kind of can get into the swing of it or the habit of it or something, and once I start doing it I kind of feel like doing more. Yeah, I was just walking home, it was really cold and I just kind of got in and felt like making myself a cup of tea and talking to you guys a bit, and also kind of talking to you a bit about where I'm at right now, what's going on for me in my life and in my spirituality and all that kind of stuff, because I suppose I feel like I'm still in the phases, although I'm probably nearing 50 videos at this point. I feel as though I'm still kind of in the stage of trying to give you the basics of my spirituality and of my thoughts on things, and it feels a bit scattered sometimes. It feels a bit like, oh, I'm talking about this over there and then I'm talking about this over here, and I don't feel as though I'm sort of sharing what's actually happening for me right now and how that all looks for me right now. I'm not sure why I feel so much like I want to share that, but for some reason I do. I suppose it's just something that ever since I started blogging, I've always had quite a personal kind of approach to it. I like reading blogs that have a sort of personalized kind of tone to them. So yeah. So this might be a bit of a rambly and all over the place kind of video because sorry, I'm just adjusting my usual mirror behind my tablet so that I can actually just make sure it doesn't shut off or something. My other camera does that quite a lot. It likes to just turn off randomly, so I have to have like a mirror behind it so I can check if it's still actually recording every now and then. Anyway, yeah, this might be a bit of a rambly, all over the place kind of video because that's kind of how I feel where my head is at right now. There's a lot going on spiritually and in my life, and yeah, so I'll just see where it goes. So okay, first of all, the job that I'm working in currently, which I knew I was going to be working there up until the end of March, and after that I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to be kept on or not, because it's a publicly funded by the Arts Council organisation, and you know, money is pretty thin on the ground, and they were kind of waiting as well to hear about funding for this financial year and all that kind of thing. So yeah, but I found out last Wednesday, I think it was, that I am actually going to be, I have been offered employment there until at least the end of August. Kind of with the idea that it will probably extend further than that, but that's as long as they can guarantee me for now. And I'm actually joining a team, well, the whole team of the whole organisation is pretty small, but I'm going to be joining a team of a couple of people working on a specific project for, well, probably starting pretty much immediately once they've figured out exactly how that's working and everything. And I have asked to work part-time. I'm currently working a 4-day week, but I had already decided that if I was offered a job in the area that I'm working in now, which is I might as well. I don't feel any problem saying this. It's in the kind of library archives kind of world, and it's, as I've probably said before on numerous occasions, it's not something that I want to continue to do. It's not something that's working out for me. It's just not where I envision my life going, if you know what I mean. It's fine for now, and it's a lovely place to work. They're really lovely people, but it's just not ultimately for me. So I had already decided that I was not going to accept full-time work, that I was going to, I said a maximum of 20 hours. I've kind of now said a maximum of 24 hours a week, but I'm hoping that I'll be working 20 hours. So it hasn't really changed my overall plans very much, in that I'm still going to be opening the shop soon, and I'm not sure when, but I'll talk about that in a sec. That's still going to go ahead, and I'm hoping that because I'm only working part-time in this place, that I will still have a lot of time on my hands, and I will have more time on my hands to get the Etsy shop up and running, to keep writing my ebook, which has unfortunately been put on hold for the last while, and all the other various projects that I kind of want to get going with. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting because they they're paying me very well. I am qualified. I have a master's in this subject, so they are paying me very well for what I'm doing. So even just working 20 hours a week, I will actually be making, I budget quite stringently as well, so I will actually be making more money than I need to live on, with my current rent and living situation and all that kind of thing. My rent is relatively expensive because I live on my own, but yeah, I've gotten used to living on a budget and it doesn't bother me anymore. It's just how I live. So I can afford to just work part-time, and then obviously I'm hoping that I will start making money on the Etsy shop, but it's not an urgent kind of, oh my god, I need to make money on that kind of thing. I'm doing it first and foremost because I want to do it, and I think it will be, whether or not tarot reading is something that I really will continue doing as a career in the long run. I'm not altogether sure if that's going to be something that I want to continue doing. Obviously I know that I want my career to go down the path of sort of spiritual stuff, for want of a better phrase. But yeah, I feel that the time is right for me right now to be offering readings. And offering them for money allows me to do that a lot more. It allows me to spend more time on doing readings for other people, and I think it will really, really help me to step my tarot reading up, or step my tarot experience up to the next level. And I kind of envision myself maybe writing more and teaching more about tarot in the future rather than doing actual readings for people, maybe. But I think this is an important step for me in getting towards that, in figuring out what my vision is for how tarot is going to fit in with my life and my career. So that's happening. And it's all very, yeah. So then I'm working on the shop. And the reason I haven't set a date for that is because I don't want to put myself under too much undue pressure. I do have a vague date in my head for when I want to open it. I'm not sure whether or not that's going to go ahead. And I am actually struggling through a bit of kind of emotional resistance around that. I'm trying to force myself to only work on the things that are like physically necessary, like creating graphics, and I'm designing a website and stuff, which I'm hoping to launch at the same time as the Etsy shop. I'm trying to just do the basics on that and not worry myself too much about fine-tuning the nitty-gritty of the readings that I'm going to be, the spreads that I'm going to be offering and stuff, because I have been thinking about that for a long time and I am comfortable with what I've chosen to put out there. But I'm terrible for overthinking things and for questioning myself and for deciding, oh no, that's all terrible, that's not good enough, I can't possibly put that out there. So I'm kind of struggling to work through that. Sorry, I've just remembered that I made myself a pot of tea and haven't actually drunk any yet. So yeah, the Etsy shop is coming along and the website and all that, and that will happen sometime in the next couple of months at the very latest kind of thing. One of the things that I'm struggling with as I go through this process of setting up the shop and thinking about what projects I might want to work on in the future going forward with that as well. I mean, it's not just going to be an Etsy shop. I'm probably eventually going to move everything just onto my website. And as I said, I'm using the name Heart Story for my business, and I do envision it as a broader kind of business, not just for tarot reading, but for all sorts of other things that I might want to draw into that. But one thing that has been coming up pretty majorly for me right now, and I think it's as a result of all the planning that's been going into that, is problems with over planning and problems with being too rigid, trying to fit into a certain structure, trying to fit my life into a routine, when it really isn't plausible or even particularly healthy for me to do that at this time. I mean, the whole reason that I want to be working part-time is so that I don't have to have too rigid a structure, so that it frees me up, so that I only have to be committed to going into work, say 3 days a week, rather than 4 or 5, and that kind of frees me up to go to my parents' house for a few days if I want to, or go to my boyfriend's house for a few days if I want to, kind of thing, and not be worrying too much, you know, about how I'm fitting in everything and how I'm slotting in that time. But I am absolutely terrible for making plans and schedules and deciding how many hours I'm going to work per day or during the week, or what I'm going to be doing on any specific one day. And I think I went through a phase when I went to college originally. I was feeling very overwhelmed, and I was very disorganized initially, and I think I flipped into this mode of super over organization, which I had actually never really done before. In my teenage years, it was never something I would have imagined was possible for me, but it's a major issue for me actually, because it starts to create stress for me, pretty major stress, because I start to get into this kind of cycle of really sort of obsessive thinking, where I'm sort of trying to plan everything out in minute detail. And this goes way beyond even planning things for like next month or even next year. This can go way above and beyond what you would consider to be normal and sort of smart planning. It gets to the point where I'm thinking about things that may or may not happen in, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time, and I start trying to plan ahead for that kind of stuff, which is obviously ridiculous, and something that if I catch myself doing it, I try to stop. But it's something that I'm really only discovering about myself for the moment, and like I'm not altogether sure why I feel like I need to share this here on YouTube, because kind of aspects of the shadow like that, any kind of shadow work that I'm doing, I usually keep personal. I usually don't talk to anybody about it really, but this is something that is just so sort of it's so pervasive, and if anyone who knows me very well knows that I have this tendency. So yeah, for some reason I just felt like I wanted to talk a little bit about it here, and just say, yeah, that's something I go through, and maybe putting it out there and sharing that will help me to start putting that to one side. And I am struggling at the moment with finding a balance between that, and then there are things that I do that I feel like probably could benefit from a bit more organisation or planning, like for productivity kind of purposes, like random Google searching. I get so addicted to, I can sit down and think, oh, I'm going to look up this one thing, and like an hour later I'm like deeply immersed in some blog or in some God knows what stuff, and it gets time just runs away. It just runs away from me, and it's not entirely useful or constructive. It's not nurturing, it's not particularly healthy. So I suppose what I'm saying is that I have an obsessive tendency, and it can be quite difficult for me to acknowledge that and to recognise when it's becoming unhealthy and to know when to step away. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to move away from too much structure at the moment in my life, but at the same time I'm trying to impose structure in some areas, like say to myself, right, I'm going to sit down on the internet, I'm going to do this, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos, or I'm going to do, I'm going to reply to comments, I'm going to check Facebook for 5 minutes or whatever, rather than allowing myself to go down that rabbit hole of just the internet just sucking up time, and then feeling annoyed that I didn't sit down with a book or a journal instead, or meditate, or all the other many, many things that I could have done that I would have enjoyed doing a lot more. So that's something that I'm working through at the moment, that's really just come up for me majorly over the weekend, when I found myself getting rather upset talking to my boyfriend about how my life is very difficult because I live in 3 different places, and I want to do this daily spiritual routine, this spiritual practice, and it's very difficult for me because I find it hard to do it in my parents' house, I find it hard to do in his house, and I just found myself getting very stressed out about it. And he was kind of saying, if it's something you want to do, well then it's not something you have to do. Surely if the impetus is coming purely from yourself, if you miss it on a day or two, you can say, well, that's too bad, I'll do it today now that I can. But I was getting very sort of, no, I want to do it every day, and that's true, but I think I need to be a bit more flexible about that, and if I really want to do it every day, then I will. I can get up in my parents' house or Keith's house, and I said his name. I think I've been sort of avoiding saying his name on the channel, but I don't think it particularly matters. So yes, his name is Keith. There's nothing stopping me getting up and meditating there. It's just a little bit more difficult. It frustrates me because I find it harder to focus, particularly if there's a chance that somebody's going to start talking to me, walk into the room, call up to me, or whatever it is. But it all comes back to that root of me feeling just very tense and uptight about things, rather than just going with the flow, and just allowing myself to sort of do what feels right in the moment, I suppose. Another thing that's kind of being shaken up for me a lot right now is my spirituality. I mean, what's new? that always seems to be shaken up at the moment. It's going through constant change. I'm working on developing my relationship to the Morrigan, and I feel like I'm at this phase now where it stepped up organically to an extent, and then it got to a point where I'm kind of frustrated that it hasn't gone any further. And not even frustrated, maybe is too strong a word, but I'm kind of actively pursuing a relationship with her, possibly for the first time really ever. I mean, it started with doing my daily devotionals sort of to her. They're sort of daily devotionals. They're pretty lax in terms of the devotional aspect, and I'm thinking I'm going to incorporate more devotional work, because at the moment, like I say, it's nothing too major. But I've also been returning to the texts, the original text. So Cotton Tura Maga Turad, if you're going with the old Irish pronunciation, Cotton Maga Turad and the Laber Gabal. It's really difficult for me to pronounce them actually in the old Irish way, because the old Irish, they pronounce the B's and the G's even if they have H's, and then in modern Irish you don't really pronounce them, they're soft. So Laura Gavala is Leber Gabala, I think, yes, in the old Irish. Anyway, so the original texts that the Morrigan appears in, and of course Táin Bó Cúailnge and all that stuff, I've been kind of returning to that, doing a bit of reading, but also mostly I've discovered these podcasts on a website called Story Archaeology. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's saving me an awful lot of time because I'm currently in work. I'm working on this. What I'm doing is it's really mind-numbing stuff, and I actually find that I'm not listening to anything at the same time. I just drift off my own head and I don't do anything. Whereas if I'm listening to a podcast, I will kind of continue to turn the pages and work through the book that I'm reading through. So it's actually helping me to be more productive, which is brilliant. Doing two things at once, which usually doesn't work, and I usually don't advise, and I usually can't do it all. I usually can't multitask like that at all. Yeah, so I've been listening to those podcasts and going back to the original texts, and I feel like my perception of her is changing a bit, and I feel like I'm ready to have a more personal relationship with her, even if it's not quite there yet. So yeah, and obviously my ideas about the gods as gods or deities has been changing as well recently, and I did talk about that in my video, my journey with the Morrigan. I feel like I'm moving away from that very non-theistic archetypal kind of perspective, and I find it interesting that you can have Jungian pagans who view the gods as archetypes, but they can have two totally different kind of takes on it or something. You can end up with two very different flavours. So say somebody like Kellyanne, who is a pantheist, and then there's someone like John Halstead, and if you don't know of him, I very firmly suggest you check him out. He has a blog called Allergic Pagan, and then he has another blog as well, which I can't, Dreaming the Myth Forward, which is more specifically about his Jungian practices and Jung and paganism and all that. He's an absolutely brilliant writer, but he is definitely more firmly in the non-theistic. I mean, he calls the archetypes gods, but to look at the two, to watch Kellyanne's videos or read her blog and to read John Halstead's blog, you would not think that they were kind of coming at it from a very similar kind of perspective of deities, of how they work and what they are and all that kind of thing. And I'm realising as well that, there's something about, we use these labels to sort of try to explain to ourselves and to others what our beliefs are and how we think that things work. But I think there's so much nuance that we sometimes don't acknowledge, and I get very caught up in that and thinking, oh, well, if I'm this, if I don't believe in this, I can't believe in that, and all this kind of thing. But it's all at the end of the day about the feeling of it. And I realised reading one of John Halstead's blog posts the other day that I've actually diverged a lot from him and other similarly minded pagans in the last, months or maybe a year since I really started developing my spiritual practice. I think I'm allowing myself to open up to more possibilities and to really actually allow myself to believe what I truly believe, if that makes any sense, rather than just thinking, oh well, if I don't literally believe in personified deity as separate sentient spirit-like beings, then I must be a non-theist, or I must only see them as something that is within our own brains. But when you're a pantheist, it's just because something is within your own brain doesn't mean that it's not connected to the universe, doesn't mean that it's not something much huger than yourself and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite expansive, and that's all kind of expanding out for me a lot right now. And I think that weirdly enough, and some polytheists would shudder to hear me say this, but devotional polytheism is something that might actually start to become a lot bigger in my practice. And I definitely don't have the same beliefs or experiences that a lot of devotional polytheists who actually would use that label to describe themselves. I mean, I wouldn't really. I got lost in the middle of a sentence there, but their practices often look very different to what mine probably will. But essentially that is what I'm moving towards, some element of devotional polytheism within a pantheistic context. Yeah, I think that was probably most of what I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, the last thing was just that I'm feeling some videos about, or more videos about, the feminine and masculine divine coming on. I just watched Kellyanne's video, or listened to Kellyanne's video while working. I was actually working, like I said. For some reason, multitasking is working out very well for me in the workplace right now. But I just watched Kellyanne's video on the masculine and feminine, and a lot of things just started to click into place for me. You know, when you have that experience where you've read certain things and you're aware of certain ideas, but it just hasn't all quite slotted into place for you yet. And I was feeling that with the idea about the masculine and the feminine. And although I made that video, and I realised after making the video, I think that my thoughts weren't as clear as I maybe thought they were on the whole subject. And yeah, a lot of things sort of started to click into place for me. So that's interesting. I haven't processed all of that yet, so I'm not altogether sure what, if anything, needs to be added to that video if I do decide to make another video. I think that might actually be a few weeks down the line once I've processed it more and once it's come into play more in my practice. Oh, and sorry, one more final thing. Just in relation to breaking out of rigid structures and stuff like that, rigid routines and stuff, I realised that I do that too with my spirituality, that I actually impose these structures on myself. And obviously when I'm trying to figure out my spirituality, to an extent it has to be structured to begin with, because you have to try something out a certain amount of times before you figure out, okay, that does work for me or it doesn't work for me. You know, I think it's more difficult if you just do a completely different ritual every time. I feel like if I had done that to begin with, I wouldn't have got such a feel for what I believe, what I want to practice, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, because it would have been quite scattered. But I feel like I'm getting to the point now in my practice where I'm still trying to shove things into boxes. I'm just still trying to make clear divisions between things. And that is how my brain works. I'm always going to have that tendency. But yeah, I would like to break out of that a little bit more. And I need to think about how I might do that. I mean, I was thinking as well about my permanent altar. Having a permanent altar is fantastic. But it also means that it somewhat limits you, because if you're like me and you like everything to be in its right place and you set everything out very carefully, I then end up not really changing up my altar at all. Whereas if I had to lay out my altar every time I did a ritual, I think it might be a lot more fluid, and I might feel like representing different things on my altar at different times. So I think I would like to do that more, and I definitely want to make more space for myself and more time for myself to actually write new rituals for at least every Sabbath. And rather than just using a set structure that I already have. And that takes a lot more effort and a lot more time, but it's something that I feel like I really want to do right now. And if I want to use some of the same words and poetry each time, well, that will come. And I think some of the stuff that I do each time is important for me and will stay. But yeah, I've said this before, and I said this around the time of the winter solstice, that I was sort of trying to break out a bit, and I'm still struggling with that a bit. But I think it's just a bit more, weirdly, a bit more organisation in order to be less organised is what is necessary. Setting aside the time well in advance so that I can actually sit down pick out poetry that is relevant for the season. Think about, say, aspects of duality, as I was saying in my last video about the masculine and the feminine. I like to look at the divine through the lens of binaries such as destruction and creation, dark and light, order, chaos, manifest, unmanifest. But doing all of that in one ritual is quite difficult, and some of them are maybe more relevant to me at different times than others. So yeah, more organisation for more freedom or something. I don't know. I'm still working through that, figuring out what does need to be organised in my life and what doesn't. And yeah, I'm just hoping to let go more, hoping to feel more free. And yeah, I think that's about it. So yeah, I hope some of you at least actually watched this through. I'm sorry if it was a bit rambly and a bit random, but I just felt like, I don't know, getting you all up to date with where I'm at right now and what's going on and that kind of thing. So take care, guys. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.